What's going on, Colts Nation? Well, the Indianapolis Colts are now officially eliminated from the 2022 playoffs. Thank goodness. With how bad this division has been, it has taken this long. But with the Jacksonville Jaguars win on Thursday Night Football against the New York Jets, Colts officially eliminated now. Colts currently sit at number 6 overall pick. Will definitely move up to 5, if not higher, this coming week. So we'll see what happens with that if the Colts do lose. But Matt, we'll talk about that stuff as it comes. I wanted to just talk about this again, how now 2 straight seasons, the Indianapolis Colts have not made the playoffs, right? There's a lot of high hopes. This offseason, the Colts talked about, Jim Irsay specifically talked about all chips in, all that, the whole mantra, and now the Colts seem to be all chips in on the top of the draft board. But you just look at this organization from top to bottom right now, Matt, is just in shambles. Now you've missed the playoffs twice in the last 2 years. Jacksonville both times has ended your playoff look. And it's just coming to the point, man, where this is a very much a failed regime that the Colts have had, unfortunately, since Chris Ballard and Frank Reich, came in 2017, 2018. This team and this organization right now, this is one of the most losing stretches it's had in quite a long time. So what are your thoughts here on now? Colts kind of in a weird position they haven't been in a long time with no clear-cut number one quarterback. They're just in a weird position that we haven't really seen them. I know I haven't seen them since I started following them. So what are your thoughts just overall on this Colts team right now and just the lack of success they've had recently?
It's really just disappointing. Like last year, you had 7, 8 Pro Bowlers on there. Should have made the playoffs last year, but of course, last 2 weeks, just everything fell apart, and then it continued this year, which is really unfortunate because there are some really talented players on this team. Now I think we're entering the point to where we're going to really see what Chris Ballard is made of, assuming he stays as GM when it comes to evaluating talent, because that's a strength of his. He's good at seeing some of those players that maybe some people don't think of in a draft, takes them, and then they end up becoming really good players. Rodney Thomas being one for this past season, being a pretty nice safety for us. And Darius Leonard, I believe, what was he considered the worst pick of the draft when we took him? Like he was an F grade, ended up being a pretty good ball player. But it's clear they got to take a quarterback, and we're going to find out, like I said, assuming Ballard's here, what is Ballard made of? Because if Ballard can do a really good job at finding that one quarterback, this team is back, because we have the defense. We have some nice pieces on offense. You get that young quarterback in there, the ship, it could turn around. Maybe not win a Super Bowl, but it could start heading in the right direction. So this is going to be, for Ballard, probably his most important offseason in Indianapolis. It's got to be.
Yeah, and there's no guarantees. I know Jim Irsay's talked a lot about it, but Colts the last 2 weeks have been straight up embarrassed, right, on prime time, back-to-back weeks. And if they pull another stunt like that this week, you do wonder, like, as much as Jim Irsay, said things about how Frank Reich was, going to be safe as a head coach, and that didn't happen. That was very short. So Jim Irsay's been very unpredictable recently, just some of the moves that he's made. But I think we got to just go back and look at and ask the question, why have the Colts been struggling? Why have they been failing miserably short this year to their goal of making the playoffs, winning the division? Since Chris Ballard's been here, the Colts have not won a division title. They've never won a home game they never won a week 1 game actually at all. They made the playoffs twice, won 1 game, lost 1. Lost 2. I'm sorry, because they did go to the divisional round against the Chiefs. So, 1 and 2 in the playoffs, losing record in the playoffs. And I think I have to start just with what we've been talking about a lot moving into this offseason, and I'm sure we will talk about it more, is just the failure to address the most important positions and put, especially quarterback. That's the most important position in the NFL, in football, and even in sports, you could argue. And the fact that the Colts have not really put a lot of resources there, I think speaks volumes to why, this team started off so poorly, why they've had all these poor starts, and why, they can't play catch up all the time, right? They don't have any room to spare down the stretch, because it's a new quarterback every single year. Ever since Andrew Luck has retired, we have to stop using that excuse,
Right.
like, oh, well, your star quarterback retired. Yes, but that was 3, 4 years ago now,
Mhm.
you know? That's something you have to, and you've had opportunities to go get your guy, but you've just been afraid or unwilling to pull the trigger. So I think we've got to talk
Yeah.
about the quarterback and just how it's been a revolving door ever since Andrew Luck hung it up.
Right, and there's been multiple opportunities where they could have traded for a quarterback in the draft because, yeah, it part of the reason why early on why this team wasn't getting the success that it honestly should have was because Andrew Luck retired, but that was like a few years ago. I think we're going to be entering the 5th year without Andrew Luck. But he still, I love DeForest Buckner, but he could have used that first round pick they got for Buckner and maybe one other first round pick and then ended up taking Justin Herbert. He could have traded up with Minnesota to get Justin Fields. I mean, he's had opportunities, or heck, I mean, if he thought, Jalen Hurts could have been some, which honestly, I don't think a lot of people probably thought going into the draft. There wasn't a lot of GMs that probably thought Jalen Hurts was worth taking, but Jalen Hurts was available in the second round. And, he's had opportunities. He just hasn't done it yet. I know some people complain about left tackle. I'm not as upset that he didn't draft a left tackle. I think when they re-signed Costanzo, they should have drafted a left tackle. I would have to go back and look at the draft. But the year they signed Eric Fisher, I don't really think there was a left tackle that was like a surefire hit. I'm cool with him signing a guy like Eric Fisher, who in the past, even though he had that ACL injury, he's been a dominant left tackle. So I can understand why he didn't draft one last year, but he finally got that taken care of. He finally got the receiver position for the most part taken care of. I think he needs to bring one more guy in just to really solidify that group. But it all comes down to quarterback. He's had his opportunities. He just hasn't taken them because he wanted to rely on the veterans that they were bringing in, which, I mean, I can understand Philip Rivers, bring him in. It seemed like that was a perfect opportunity because he was going to be available. It seemed like with the team they had, that would have worked for a year, but they could have still drafted Justin Herbert. They could have traded that pick and then one more first rounder, you know, just to move up to 7 because they weren't that far away from it. So I don't know.
Yeah,
They,
it's unfortunate, and that, and then also I know you drafted a lot of pass rushers, but you just
yeah,
really haven't like found a dominant number one. Still,
right.
I mean that's a position that's kind of on the opposite side of things. Like you invested a crap ton into that position.
Yeah.
Multiple second round picks. A
Mhm.
first round pick.
Yeah.
And you traded for Yannick Ngakoue, and yet your pass rush, while it's been better, you
Mhm.
still don't have that true dominant number one edge rusher.
Yeah, and I think Yannick has definitely improved, and he's starting to get to that point where he's, you know, a guy that's going to get you a sack a game, which is really good. But with Kwity Paye, I think Kwity Paye could have been that number one pass rusher. It's just had the injuries this year. So next year, maybe he can become that. But I thought before he was hurt and when he's healthy, he's played quite well. Dio is starting to look like he's taking that step to be a nice pass rusher too. So like, I think it's taking time, but it feels like it's starting to get to where it needs to be. It's not there yet, but it's getting there. I'd be cool with bringing back Yannick if it's like a team friendly deal, nothing that's like $20 million, but like around 10 million, I'd be cool with. But yeah, hopefully next season when Quiddy's fully healthy and Dio's fully healthy, and also Taekwon Lewis. I liked what I saw from him, and then he had an injury again around Halloween. But I do think this pass rush can be better next year. It's just they got to get healthy.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest critical thing outside of the quarterback has just been the team has, not been able to
Mhm.
basically do what it takes to win,
Right.
right? In the critical moments, right? You
Yeah.
think last year, the Tennessee game, the Colts had ample opportunities, where they should have won that game. There was multiple
Mhm.
games last year they should have won. Same with this year.
Yes.
Obviously it's a little bit different this year and things have kind of gone off the rails the last month or so, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like for a while there, the Colts were in pretty much every game. Like they were in that Commanders game, they were in the Philly game, they were in the
Yeah.
Dallas game. Even they were in. They've been in every single game, and then they just completely. And it's been amplified the last couple weeks where they've just completely just like found ways to lose, and it's been just amazing. And beyond just the, because it's very much amplified right now, beyond just this, I think just to a larger degree, that's was really been the story of the Colts under Chris Ballard and Frank Reich,
Yeah.
is they always found ways to screw it up. They always found ways to lose. Outside of really 2020, I guess 2018 as well, like they found ways to screw it up. They found ways to lose. Like I'm thinking last year, Jacksonville, and you had to win one of two games against Vegas or Jacksonville, and you just completely choke it at the end of the year. The fact that you've had opportunities to beat Tennessee, even this year, Tennessee's not looking great. The 6-8 right now could take the tie for the division lead. So this is a perfect opportunity when everybody else is kind of struggling still, that you could have really, taken the AFC South, and you just haven't done that. This team just feels like a team that definitely has talent, but it just doesn't know what to do with that talent. And it's like very just inconsistent. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But yeah, it's just like there's just so much there. And this team just does not know how to win. They just have not proven they know how to consistently, week in and week out, win.
Yeah, and I think comes down to head coach. They need that head coach that can get it together, even when they're hurt, get it all figured out and get the win. Because you see Tennessee, not this year, but like last year and I think the year before as well, they were dealing with a bunch of injuries. They had guys that were on practice squads playing as starters, but Mike Vrabel was able to make it work and was able to get it figured out. And they weren't blowing these opportunities. Whenever they had an opportunity to win, they would take advantage of it. I mean, they would get wins that they shouldn't have gotten. It seemed like they were just lucky, but really, I think it does come down to the head coach. I think you got to get that head coach that can really push it forward because, I think we can agree, even though Matt Ryan's not played good this year, he's a leader. He's a good leader. I just think you need that coach that can work well with a quarterback and they can push it over the edge. So hopefully next year they get their young quarterback. Don't know who it's going to be. Get a coach that can be aggressive, but isn't going to find ways to lose. He'll find ways to win and coach guys to win, and not waste opportunities because, 2 years ago with Wentz, should have beat Baltimore, should have beat Tennessee, and there was like a few other games they should have won. They would be a playoff team. If one of those wins or one of those games they lost would have went the way it should have went, they'd be a playoff team. This year, with how Tennessee is falling apart, depending on how far ahead you are of Jacksonville, like a game or whatever, this is a perfect opportunity. This year would have been that perfect opportunity to win the division, but got to get the head coach.
Yeah, well, I also think just looking at what Frank Reich's role was, I think he just took on too much. I think that was just honestly a big thing of it. Being the head coach and being the play caller. I personally don't feel like you can do both of them to the best of your ability. And so I just think this year, especially after how last year ended in Jacksonville, the message from Frank Reich just kind of went stale. It kind of went stale because he was so busy focusing on the offense all the time, and it's almost like I feel like with for example, Mike Vrabel, he has obviously a say in the defensive side of things, but he's a guy that knows everybody. And he has a primary focus and he understands that and he's able to motivate those guys to do what they need to do. And I feel like that is maybe the missing link for what the Colts had in Frank Reich, and it just didn't click there, because I just felt like he was in over his head. He was struggling with play calling and struggling with that accountability as well. And I think both those things need to happen. And so just a coach that understands his role and understands if I'm going to be the head coach, I may have to give up play calling. I may have to delegate to some other people. Obviously, I'll have a say in the game plan and stuff like that. But that is just something I always felt like was a disconnect, with Frank Reich, and especially over this last year. That definitely felt is the team kind of just mailing it in a little bit, and then just kind of being we've heard this before and nothing's changing, especially this year. And so that's one thing I just have wondered about. Did the message just grow stale with Frank Reich? Because he's not a guy, he's a player's coach, which is good. But I never pictured Frank Reich as a guy that would even, I know Jeff Saturday hasn't been great as the Colts coach, but he'll get in guys' faces. He'll call them out, the offensive line. They played better because Jeff Saturday called them out. Say what you want about the rest of the offense, but the offensive lines played better. And so, do you need a coach kind of like that?
Yeah, and this is gonna sound like a weird analogy, but I promise it's gonna work. It fits. You need to treat every NFL team, they need to treat it like a fast food place, right? Like a McDonald's. Because McDonald's, you have your guy that's running that one store, you have your different departments, you have your guys that are going to run the register, have your guys that are going to make the food, your cleaning people, all that. Then you have your regional managers, GM, they get a report to, and then you have the people that actually own McDonald's, Jim Irsay, you know, you go to them as well. You need to find that guy that can run a successful McDonald's. Okay. Don't be like the one in my town that's fallen apart and they had to replace the manager of that McDonald's. Get somebody that can run it, make sure everything goes well. Make sure, the registers, they're doing what they need to do. Make sure the guys cooking the food are doing the right things, keeping clean, not like itching their booties and then putting their hands in there. Make sure the cleaning people are taking care of that stuff, right? You need to find that guy. And I honestly think it's probably a mix of Frank Reich and Jeff Saturday. That guy that's going to get in your face, tell you when you're, doing something right, when you're doing something wrong, but also get that guy that players can trust, they can go to, you know, they need their
Yeah,
Mike
has
Vrabel.
experience.
Like
Right, a guy
that's
who
who
has
they're looking for.
experience. Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think there is a good combination that you can find. Like, for example, I think like D'Amico Ryans. He was a former
Yeah,
player. He gets it. He's a motivator, but he's also a guy that schematically, like, he's a great, schematic guy. And so, like a guy like that, I think would go a long way. A
yeah,
guy that'll motivate, but also, does offer something from that standpoint. Does have some coaching experience. I think there is a fine line that you can find, and there's definitely some candidates who do possess those things that I think would go really well with
yeah.
whoever you do bring in as QB this next year. So we'll see on that. I had one last thing I wanted to talk about, Matt, before we
Yes.
wrap this show up. Um, so this has been well documented how much the Colts have paid some of their own guys here recently. You think Quentin Nelson was like the latest guy the Colts paid. Is it a flawed philosophy from Chris Ballard? Is that a reason why the Colts are where they're at right now? With no quarterback, with a guard that's being paid way too much, in my opinion, for how poor he's played this year,
Right.
and just some other guys that aren't living up to their contracts. The Colts have talked all the time about paying your own guys, bringing your own guys, paying them when they produce. But you look at some of the positions they're paying. You pay a left guard,
Hmm.
you pay a slot corner, you pay, I don't even know what other, you paid a third round running back before you traded him around,
Yeah.
receiving running back. Like some of these contracts that you're dishing out, I'm just kind of like, those are good and those are good players. But
Mhm.
I do wonder, like, those aren't impact positions like the quarterback, like the pass rusher, like the number one wide receiver, like things like that. That, like, when
Right.
I look at the Colts right now and the way that they're built, like, and you look at the modern day NFL, the Colts aren't, with how much they're allocating funds to that offensive line and how poor they've played for most of the year.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like the Colts are built for today's NFL.
I I I'll just say I agreed with them re-signing the guys that they signed for that much because when they re-signed them, they were playing at very high levels. Like Leonard was playing as one of, if not the best linebackers in the entire NFL, and that's a guy where, yeah, it was a lot of money, but I'm good with paying someone like him that much money because he's the leader of that defense. He makes impact plays. He forces turnovers. Like I think that was a good contract. Yeah, he was hurt this year, but I think next year when he gets back, assuming he's fully healthy, which I believe he will be, I think, the ankle issues and the back issues, they're going to be solved this offseason. Um, so I'm cool with that. And then with like Nelson, he was playing very good too. It's just, I honestly think Nelson's hurt. And it's something they're not revealing because I, at the start of the year, how he was playing, the drop off he had, I don't really see it just being he's getting older, so his play is just not performing as well. There has to be something with his back or whatever. So there is that. And I understand why people would be upset paying a guard that much money, but they still have plenty of money to sign a number one receiver and their quarterback. Because Matt Ryan, is getting paid or would have been paid next year, what, like $30-35 million, something like that. So I mean, they have the money to bring in a number one receiver and then have their rookie quarterback for 5+ years. And when that guy needs his contract in 5 years or so, odds are Nelson's probably not playing on the Colts because he'll be what, 33 to 35 years old at that point. So I I'm not upset with it. I think it's a good philosophy to pay your guys they have in there because honestly, the guys he's paid, they deserved it. It's just I think it's injuries is why they're just not living up to their contracts. I do not buy Quinn Nelson being healthy. I think he's been hurt all year. I think we're going to find out when the season ends that he had surgery to fix whatever was wrong. I can't see him going from playing at a really good level to playing at a poor level. And he's gotten better too, so maybe those injuries are starting to heal up a little bit, but I mean, I don't know. I'm good with how Ballard's done it, paying the guys that deserve it. He's going to have around 50 million this offseason to work with, so I'm cool.
Yeah, I get that, but I'm wondering, like, for the positions they're playing, the impact
Right.
that has long term, like, and its success in winning and losing.
Yeah.
Like, you look at it, like taking a guard 6 overall when you could have probably taken somebody else. Like, I know Bradley Chubb was gone, but he would have
Yeah.
been a great choice there as well. Like, things like that where, like, you've seen, like, Chris Ballard has even shown, like, he can get Chris Reed, he can get Mark Glowinski, got
Yeah.
two quality guards. Obviously, they're not Quentin Nelson level. But he can get
Right.
two, average to above average guards for pennies on the dollar. But like now you're paying a guard that much money. I guess that just like is confusing to me because it's like, which one is it? Like
Yeah.
if you can get guards for that cheap, why did you take a guard and pay him that much?
Yeah.
Whereas like if he was a left tackle, totally get it because that's an important position.
Right.
One of the most important ones, especially just on the offensive line. So that's kind of my question. It's not like so much like paying your players. It's like
Yeah.
what the positions are that they're playing versus some of the other ones of guys that are getting paid a lot of
Right.
money. Like is that a flawed process that Chris Ballard had?
I At the moment I don't think it is just because the other positions like receiver, I don't think they're going to pay Michael Pittman, $20 million. I don't think they're going to do that at all. But when they have an opportunity to pay their number one receiver that kind of money, I, they're going to have the money to do it. Yeah, Nelson, he plays a position that isn't as impactful as other positions, but he's just different. He's different compared to other guards. He's a very important piece to the offensive line. I mean, we saw when he was drafted, the year prior, they had what, the worst offensive line in the league. And then he gets brought in and they become the best offensive line in the league. And they're a top five offensive line when he's healthy. This year, obviously, they're not a top five offensive line. Again, I don't think he's healthy, but I think he's like the exception. Like, I wouldn't normally pay a guard $20 million, but I think the impact he had on that offensive line was worth paying that kind of money. But, I think Leonard, Shaq Leonard, his position is pretty impactful. I think for the defense, yeah, it's playing really good this year, but the thing they're missing out on is turnovers. They're not getting as many turnovers as they did the previous year with Leonard. So I think he is an impactful player, and I think his position, $18 million is good to me. But again, I mean, they're going to have at least $33 million. You cut Matt Ryan, I think that makes it about 50 million. And if he retires, then it goes up to like 60 something million, I think. As long as he retires before the new year starts for the league. So
Yeah.
I mean, I can understand why people think, with Nelson not playing as impactful of a position, why he's not worth that money. But there's exceptions for every position. I think he's an impact player, and I think he deserves to be paid that well. This year, no. But I think based on previous years and what he's done, he deserves to get paid pretty well. You know, 20 is a lot, but as long as he comes back and plays good next year, I'm cool with it. Get a new offensive line coach.
Hmm. We'll see. I don't know if I agree with all that because of
Right.
just the position, and he's looked very mortal the last year and a half. So it's
I
kind of
understand.
like, is it worth paying that much where you could, that's maybe prevented you from going out and getting a Teron Armstead or somebody like that who could be like a franchise left tackle.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that I
I
feel like that's just so much more important.
my thing with Armstead, the reason why I did not want him is he's in his late 30s. I didn't
Sure.
want to
Well, that's not
pay.
the only guy.
Yeah,
I'm talking about other
I
guys in
understand.
general.
I just
That's just the guy that came to mind.
I felt like, like I was cool with drafting Bernard Ryman. I didn't think there was really any left tackle that was a free agent that I would have went after and paid big money because I'm not paying Armstead the amount of money that Miami paid him. He's 38 years old. I was perfectly fine with drafting a left tackle this year. I felt like this year was the perfect time to draft one. But I understand why people are saying that. You know, Maybe you could have signed a guy like a receiver, but again, we got Pierce, and Pierce is someone that I always felt was going to be more of a year two guy, and he would start to take that step towards the end of the year. Seemed like the process of him getting to where he needs to be was going pretty quick, and then you know he just hasn't been involved as much. But no, I understand people's I guess issues with signing Leonard, the amount of money they signed him for. But I feel like with him, I he's not having a good year. But I feel like he's a little too important for the offensive line. I feel like there really wasn't a lot of guards that would have given you the same production before you signed Nelson. I didn't think there was any guards that would have given you the production he gives you. You know, it's just I don't know. Like I said, I think next year we're going to see the old Nelson come back. I really feel like it because I think he's going to get healthy again. And like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if we see something from Ian Rappaport where Quentin Nelson went into surgery. So
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, the debate will certainly rage on as the
yeah,
season and off season comes into play. Depending if Chris Ballard is still here as the Colts GM or
right.
not, we shall see. But yeah, just interesting debate about why the Colts are where they are,
Yeah.
and there's multiple reasons as well. So yeah, we'll see, guys, what this off season holds for us. Colts obviously have just 3 more games left
Yeah.
in this 2023 season,
Ah,
and then mercifully we are in the off season,
yeah.
and we'll see where the Colts draft.
Can't get
Hopefully,
here
top
soon enough.
no, it cannot. And so, hopefully, top 3. That would be
Hopefully.
amazing if the Colts were able to get to that point. We'll see. Hopefully, it sounds bad, but hopefully Nick Foles doesn't, revive this offense, and then they reel off 2 or 3 wins.
Yeah, I mean it's over. I mean, once Jacksonville won and eliminated the Colts, what's the point of winning at
Exactly.
this point? I mean, you're not going to have the same quarterback next year. It's going to be a different quarterback. I mean, I don't know. Hopefully, we see teams like the Bears beat the Bills. I think that's definitely possible. Hopefully that happens and hopefully Tom Brady blows it against the Cardinals.
We need some, we certainly need some upsets here
Yes.
to help the Colts. Certainly they're definitely going to go up to 5 because 2 teams that are ahead of them are playing each other this week. So
Yep.
one of them will drop to number 6 and the Colts go to number 5. So that's great
Yes.
news. But yeah, hopefully Colts fans, we can hope for an upset or 2. And the Colts could really be, I think they could be up to 3 this week, Matt, if I'm not mistaken. If a
Um,
couple of teams win. I'd have to look at it, but I know there's a couple teams. There's like 3 teams ahead of the Colts right now with 4 wins as well.
they would move to 4 because Arizona and they play Tampa Bay and then the Rams and Broncos play. But the only other team is the Bears and they would have to win 2 games and the Colts have to lose out for them to move ahead of Chicago. I
Gotcha. Yeah.
believe so.
So
Yeah.
Denver and I believe LA are playing each other,
Yes.
and then Arizona. So yeah, the Colts would move up to number 4 at the best this week. They're certainly going to move up to 5, but we'll see. Maybe they can move up to number 4 as
Yeah.
well. But
Hopefully.
yeah, that'll do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, Matt. Thanks for coming in,
Yeah.
giving your insight. It's going to be a long off season, I have a feeling, and a lot's probably going to happen. So it's going to be crazy. I hope you're ready for it. I know I'm
Oh,
ready for it. I'm ready to blow this
so
team up and
excited.
go from there. So, yeah, one of the most anticipated off seasons in a long time, certainly.
Yes.
So, Yeah, guys, thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate all the support. And as always, guys, go Colts.